And this is all of the photos that we're using for the restoration.
So this is the Bible?
This is
what Brett called the Bible?
Yeah, this doesn't leave my office.
People took care of it, so I was able to play here, and I believe it's up to the current administration, board, and members to take care of it for the next generation going forward.
Several years ago, Pasatiempo leadership made the decision to hire an architect to restore the original Alister MacKenzie greens. Putting surfaces that had been touched by almost a century of sand splash, runoff, top dressing, and countless other outside agencies and architects.
Why Jim Urbina?
So Jim Urbina is probably one of the foremost experts in MacKenzie architecture in the world. And his history here of actually being a shaper on Tom Doak's team 25 years ago when they did the first restoration, I can't think of a more qualified person or a better architect that could come back now and help us through this process and restore these greens and these surrounds and these bunkers to their original state.
In April of 2023, they started with the front nine. 7 months later, and after reopening the front nine to members and the general public, it was deemed a huge success.
They wanted me to start on the back nine, and I just couldn't do it. I could not come out of the bullpen hitting the top three hitters, 18, 16, and we're gonna go over to 15. I couldn't start there. We got a good group of people, and you saw the good group of people get gelled on the front nine. And now I'm not so afraid on the back nine. I'm not so anxious about everything that we're gonna do, because as soon as I ask, the team comes together and it's boom, 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 and we do the things we need to do. And Justin makes me comfortable, and Tyson makes me comfortable, and Brett makes me comfortable, because they're looking and they're adjusting and they're fixing and they're doing all those decisions that MacKenzie kind of did by himself. And he had Robert Hunter, but frickin', I got 6 Robert Hunters here.
In this breakout feature of what is exactly being done to all 18 of the Pasatiempo greens, we're focusing in on the 16th green. With more than 12 feet of elevation change from back to front, and with 3 distinct tiers to that green, it's notorious for being one of the most diabolical putting surfaces in the world of golf.
There's a really good photo of the 16th hole with Marion Hollins standing on the green, with Bobby Jones standing in a certain area and Cyril Tolley standing in a certain area on the green. And the green has changed, not a lot, but somewhat. It used to have a little valley in that middle tier, and that's just kind of changed over time. And I'll use that photo to really recapture that valley that was in there. And that back part tier, it's kind of puffed up a little bit. I want to bring that down ever so slightly and get that valley in there just a little bit more so that there are locations to pin. We don't want to flatten it out. We don't want to make it vanilla. Nobody wants to go to Baskin Robbins and have vanilla ice cream. You want to have flavors. And we have to make sure the 16th hole, like all the other 17 greens at Pasatiempo, have some flavor. We can't make it vanilla.
Justin Mandon has been the superintendent at Pasatiempo since 2013. He has helped this course and the club navigate some turbulent times in terms of water supply. Amongst his peers, he is widely considered one of the best in the business. Mandon is going to help us understand this complicated and layered process, and we're breaking it into 7 parts.
So the first thing we do when we go to a green is we take a shaper and we pull the fat. We trim the fat off the green. So what happens over almost 100 years, and even in the last 25 years since the last restoration, which was outside of the green, is that you get sand accumulation from frequent top dressing, from aeration, from bunker splash. So you take a shaper and you go around the entire greens complex. So you're pulling sand off of the green that has built up and in the transitions between the green and the bunker. And once you get around the entire green, that's kind of like your base.
This is the 16th green as it was map contoured in 2015, 2014. And what it doesn't show is a buildup of extra sand material around the outside. And when we start the process, we start by removing the outside edge of the green all the way around. And we remove the outside of the green, we're taking the collar and the green and we're removing all of the top dressing sand that's been built up over years and years and years of work.
With every green, they start the model process using shovels to search for clues of what used to be. Back to the past, which tells them where they're going in the future.
So we look at where those old pin positions probably were, and then we start doing some excavation, some archaeology. So Jim starts digging holes in the greens. We start looking at the layers on the different tiers of the greens, where maybe more sand is accumulated in certain spots than others.
And so we're shooting grades. We started that last night, the night before, doing potholes where we dug in the ground, we looked at the profile of the sand, Justin confirmed, and we could tell when activity had picked up, sand started to really get applied to these greens, an organic layer, a clay layer, a sand layer, and then really, really heavy amounts of sand getting put on these greens over time. Yesterday, the day before, we started to validate that. Now we're pulling off those sands and we're creating the levels to the best of our ability, what was there based on the profile that we see.
So the original grade of the green was right here. And then you've got about 40 years of no top dressing before it was really a thing, before it was practiced frequently agronomically on golf courses, and when people just didn't have money, they weren't top dressing anything. And then you got the heavy top dressing period starts here, where the green really starts to evolve and push up high.
From an extensive archive of images and what they learn from the layers of what's under the surface, they're clear about where they're going back to, but there's still some interpretation and nuance as to what will be the finished product.
Then Jim comes in and we look at all the pictures that we have, and we're really only concerned with pictures between 1929 and 1931, because after 31, a lot of changes started to happen. Even though MacKenzie was here, after 31, you really started to see a lot of changes on the golf course. So we don't even have a lot of documentation after 1931 to 1940. So we come in and we look at the pictures and we're really focusing on where are the pins in these pictures, because it tells you a lot. It tells you where a lot of pins have been lost over time.
This is where Urbina starts leaning into that modern team of Robert hunters.
It takes time to come out here and look and go back. Justin, come out, take a look at me, and we go back. Tyson, come out, take a look at me. Brett, come out. So there's over and over and over dialogue, and you just can't do these in a day or a month or 2 months. They take time, and you got to get off the machine, go take a look, shoot some grades, go back over, and constantly changing the brush stroke, adjusting the color palette, adjusting the frame of what we're doing, making sure we're following it, because other people get to look at the same pictures that we're looking at, and we have to make sure it's the right picture and it's the right sequence and it's the right presentation.
Two of the Robert hunters on this project are the father and son team of Roger and Tyson Downing of Earth Sculptures, the course renovation and construction company that's all too familiar with MacKenzie and Pasatiempo.
You do a project, you have your site, you have your architect, you have a contractor, you got a superintendent and an agronomic crew. And they all have to marry together. And usually one of them doesn't marry very well. And it makes projects a little bit more difficult to execute. But in this case, we had all the right players. And Earth Sculptures, Roger Downing, who was here 25 years ago, who's spent a ton of time shaping at Pasatiempo, and now his sons, Nate and Tyson, being on property, taking over that small family-run company and doing the restoration work here. They are just phenomenal to work with. I mean, for them to work off of black and white pictures, that's the work they want to do, right? right. That's the most exciting and rewarding work that they can do, and I think they hit it out of the park.
Anytime you're dealing with MacKenzie, it's always, you know, the top of the heap. This isn't our first MacKenzie remodel, and it's not our first time redoing it from pictures either. So we've got a lot of experience doing this. It's just a lot of fun. So I love doing this work.
Another Robert Hunter, if you will, on Urbina's crew is Brett Hochstein, a young architect in his own right. He has been called in on this project to do some shaping of the bunkers and humps that will be critical pieces to the restoration puzzle.
Brett was a huge role and a shaper that Jim, encouraged us to bring in. And in looking at the work that he had done and talking with a lot of other superintendents on projects that he had worked on, I was really confident in his abilities. And then once he came in, the bunkering that he was able to recreate on so many of these greens complexes is just, it's unbelievable. We got to a point where when we get stuck on bunkers, it was like, well, we got to call Brett. Brett's the guy, because Brett's going to take the time and he's going to make sure the elevations are right and the look is right and everything just blends together and looks like MacKenzie. So he is a huge part of this project, and especially in the bunkers.
I've been pinching myself the last couple of days. Like, I'm here working on one of the most famous greens in the world. It's pretty cool. Even like when I'm over here on 10, I'm just looking across like there's 16 right there. Look at those tiers, and it's really cool.
Once the team feels comfortable with what they've learned from the ground and what they're looking at in the old images, the past ultimately becomes that future.
Jim takes a shaper, carefully boarding himself onto the green because we don't want to disturb what we already have because it's kind of our base. And then Jim starts slowly carving out the old pin positions on the green. And a lot of it's done by hand, a lot of it's done by rakes, a lot of it's done by laborers, but really slowly, methodically working your way from back to front, starting to recreate what we call the model of the original green.
Through this model process, tough conversations are had, critical decisions are made.
And you agree with the half and half rough, half fairway?
It might be 60-40.
Okay.
And so that is the dilemma whenever you're restoring a golf course, that it could be an uncomfortable situation. I said it last night to Justin. Justin, your top of your green is going to get smaller. And he says, I don't care, because it was just space out to the right as we're looking, players right, that was non-usable. It was falling off the cliff. And now we're recapturing that MacKenzie's intent with the punch bowl back there, kicking the ball in. So that's forgiving. But he is gonna lose green space on the top, and he's gonna lose green space on the bottom. And that's what we have to be careful with, that fine balance.
So after days, weeks, months, and in this case, years of thoughtful planning and preparation, the team has what they deem to be that balance, which is when they lock in on the look of what will be the 16th green for the foreseeable future.
Once Jim signs off on the model, and like you said, there's a lot of input from a lot of different people on that model and a lot of consensus on what we want, then we laser scan the green. So we laser scan the green to within 1/10 of an inch of what's there. And then that laser scan is forever. So now that we built that model, we can always go back to that laser scan. We don't have to do this again at any point in time, because the evolution starts the day the golf course opens. As soon as the evolution starts over the next 10, 20, 30 years, even mitigating it with certain maintenance practices that we can do, it's gonna start to evolve, and we can always go back to it. And then once we have that model set and laser scanned, we start the coring of the green.
Before the coring, we check in with Urbina for his reflections on finalizing that model.
We started on the 16th green on Monday of this week. It's now Wednesday. For me, it didn't start last Monday. It started 5 years ago. If somebody said, what would you do here? And I just laid and waited and waited and waited, knowing that there was a bunch of missing pieces here. And to come up on this green on Monday and realize that the missing pieces were going to start to come back together was, on my part, having patience, on my part, trusting Brett and Tyson and Justin
and everybody involved here, the crew, the construction crew, trusting that we were going to get to this point. And on Monday, you know, we're talking about getting some dirt in here, and we're talking about the formula, and we're talking about what we're trying to get for the model. And it started slow, but it ended on to me, a perfect night, a perfect time. And the last little edit on the left side of number 16, that bump we're talking about on that high pitch, that was really the icing on the cake, because we knew that the punch bowl was going to be right. We got the lines right, but to imagine what that was going to look like and to realize that it was going to tie into that upper pin, we knew that it was in the picture. Until you see it, you can't believe it. And now, after the third day, after 5 years, I'm pretty freaking happy. And shit, you just hope these things come together. And today, it kind of came together, and that's a good thing.
In episode 2 of what they've done in the dirt at Pasatiempo, through the lens of the 16th green, it's the coring, drainage, recreating the model, the final edits, the seeding, the grow-in, and the finished product.